Hey everyone, it's Nat,
And Gerald.
and welcome back to another episode of the Work It Podcast. This episode is brought to you by UOB. Now, Gerald, I was thinking about how much the idea of a stable career has changed over the years.
I think it has really changed.
It's so different now, right?
I don't even think it exists anymore.
Yeah, because I remember my parents used to tell me, get a job in a big company and then you're set for life.
That's what everybody's parents tell them, I believe.
Yeah.
Most parents will tell them the same thing.
Exactly. And I mean, we've talked about it before on this podcast. Technology is reshaping the way that we work. And now with AI in the mix, the changes are coming faster and faster.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's like this word that we've been hearing for the last couple of years, right? Future-proofing. The company, businesses want to future-proof themselves. And as a result, employees got to future-proof themselves. So, but what exactly does this future-proof mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we're going to find out today. We're going to get some clarity on what future-proofing exactly entails with someone whose job entails future-proofing for the
Nice.
company and for the employees there. So we're speaking with someone who's leading the transformation at UOB, Dean Tong, the head of Group Human Resources at UOB. Welcome to the podcast, Dean.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
When you look at the financial industry as a whole, UOB being a bank, where are the biggest shifts happening in terms of the job demands?
So before we go into the job demand, it's probably good to step back and look at what are the trends that are reshaping financial services and hence the job. Regulation is for sure something that is changing very quickly for
Okay.
us. There are more regulation nowadays given the increased complexity of financial services, and that has created new jobs opportunities and also make some of the more traditional jobs obsolete as well. The other big one that you mentioned earlier on, which is technology. Technology has always had an impact on financial services, but the rate of change has increased tremendously over the last few years, especially with the advent of Gen AI. This is touching almost every jobs within the bank. Last but not least, the demographic shift that we are all experiencing in Singapore as well as around the world. Now, where you're finding 4 different generations working in the same company, right? So the skill set that you need to work with each other to bring out the best, that is becoming increasingly a challenge for us to need to manage as well.
I mean, I hear a lot of changes are happening, but I don't exactly see what the changes are. Like when we talk about skill gaps, what are the most apparent that you've observed with particular reference to UOB?
When we talk about skill gap, I think we can divide it into 2 front, right? One is the technical skills. This is very much based on in-demand topics, and this will change from time to time. But there are also some of the skills gap the skills requirement that would be quite constant, like the fundamental of bankings, understanding the role of banks being an intermediary, payments, trade, and so on and so forth. Those things will be there. But the means in which we facilitate some of these will change. And this is where some of the new technical skill may be required. Let me take one space, for example, that I talk about how regulation has changed. The space of anti-money laundering and anti-financial crime. In recent years, it has received a lot of attention because our regulator, rightfully so, has actually really geared up the regulation in this space. And what it means for many banks is that you have to really up our game. And in order to do so, we need the capabilities. Many may not exist within the bank. So you need to bring people in to understand how scams are being done, the new ways of doing so in the market, and constantly be one step ahead of them. So even if you have done this for many years, you need to bring in new capabilities or you need to upskill and reskill them to combat the new type of scams, the new type of money laundering, especially with a new technology, with new means of transferring money, you always have to catch up. Right. Yeah.
So in that example that you just gave, right? So for the employees who are working on it, so what kind of skill sets would they need to develop, just particular to that to that function?
So if you look at, say, in order to ensure that the money is clean before we actually do any transaction, there's a process called KYC within the bank, know your customer, right? And then one of the things that you need to do is to identify the source of wealth, where the money has actually come from. And oftentimes it's not so easy, right? Because there's a lot of complex cases, especially if you're onboarding a foreigner as well, then you have to actually go figure out whether the source of money are legit or not. And you are trained to look out for potential signs of where, there could be certain things that you need to investigate further. Let me give you an example in our branch area, right? Because this is oftentimes the front line where they will pick up some of the scam cases. They are being trained to actually read for sign of a distress alert. I mean, sometimes when an elderly customer walks in with even family members, you have to watch out for sign that the elderly has been under duress because of pressure from the family member to withdraw money. You need to ask questions. You need to buy time while you're actually reporting to the police in the background. So a lot of times they even have to train to work under pressure, because the very customer that you try to protect, they oftentimes are the one that's going to abuse the staff. So you have to be trained up for that as well. And how do you manage the situation, de-escalate the situation, and wait for the time where you can really address that. So oftentimes you read from the newspaper are the end results, but the process is very painful. And this requires special training and then, of course, practice on the job and supervisor coaching along the way. So you get better at it as you develop this over time.
Yeah.
Of course, these skills will continue to evolve because there are other methods or other means. So constant reskilling will be required in this space, just as an example. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, because when we think about the business itself, it's always changing. I think banking is no longer like the olden days, when things are a lot more simpler. Now it's a lot more complex. There are many threats everywhere. And when you mention, the need to keep reskilling, right? I think that's the business direction, to keep reskilling the workforce. But I think from the employee side, it must be like so.
It is.
Causes a lot of pressure, a lot of worry, and people constantly have to be kept on their toes. So in your role as like the team overseeing transformation, right? Like how do you all do it to help the employees keep up with all these changes?
Yeah, this is a very real question. In fact, one of the challenges that every company will face when they do reskilling is that, especially in Singapore, and also in many parts of the world, when we leave school, right, we almost like stop learning, because now you're focusing on doing the work, right? So to say, hey, let's take a pause and go back to so-called school and start to learn, it's difficult. And especially for someone who have done a certain job for many years, and now you want the person to pivot into a new role, you are almost having to relearn from scratch. And you may have to report to someone more junior than you, in a new area. So that's the psychology that someone will have to go through. Understanding this helps us in our design of the program. We have a program at UOB called Better You. And Better You was actually set up about 7 years ago to help upskilling and reskilling. In doing so, we started off by providing a soft skill at that point in time in areas such as problem solving, data analytics, data storytelling, so that when change comes, they are more ready for some of the change. But what we also learn is that without knowing which job we want to put them into the next job, it's very hard to reskill in general, right? Because you actually don't know specifically what they have. So over time, we have refined the way we're actually doing reskilling. Today, we actually have a transparent view of what are the in-demand jobs and what are the jobs that are being sunsetted. And some jobs that's being offshore, for example. The starting point is the willingness. So we will have a conversation with the individual and to really understand the motivation. For the people who are willing, then this is where we invite them in and we provide them with the environment that will increase the probability of success. What are some of those things? First of all, we provide them with training, both psychological preparation as well as how to get started in the new job. We also provide training to their manager, the new manager, because the best training is on-the-job training, right? But many managers are not used to training people who are coming in midstream, are needing to prove themselves. So this is where they need to be prepared to help the transition for this individual. For the first 12 months, we protect the individual from the usual performance management, right? Because you will be making mistakes, and this period is meant for you to ask the questions that you usually are too shy to ask, and to make honest mistakes.
So they don't have a praise, but they get a bonus, right?
Yeah. So they will get feedback, right? And during this point in time, we will not rate them. We have a rating of 1 to 5. If you are rated 1 and 2, this is where you have that difficult conversation. So during this period, that's done. But what we also tell them is that beyond this period, the usual performance management will kick back in. So the individual are given time to learn, but they're also being told that at some point you have to be standing on your own feet, right?
Yeah. I mean, I imagine for employees actually it's quite difficult because they are faced with an unforeseen circumstance. Suddenly their manager or like several managers above them ask them to come sit down in the office and say, look, your job is either going to go or you gotta try something new within the organization. So do they actually have some agency to choose what kind of new role they get in this reskilling process?
The answer is yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, in a sense that they can actually indicate their preference, areas that they want to go in. But at the end of the day, it's based on demand and supply, right? Whether at that point in time we have the jobs available. But they can say, amongst these 3 jobs that's available, I prefer job A, B versus C. That one we can actually take their preference into consideration. The other thing that we do is also job matching. What we found is that if your base competency, have an overlap with the new job, and we use 50% as our rough gauge, then your chances of success is a lot higher. If you're starting from scratch and you have to learn, from zero all the way down within the 12 months, this can be difficult, right? But so far, I think the good news for us is that of the upskilling and reskilling that we've done, that we've put through this program, the success rate has been quite high. In fact, the turning point is 6 months. The first few months, extremely difficult, right? People want to give up, managers say, painful, staff say painful, right? But as you move along, 3rd month, say, okay, you see improvement.
Starting to get there.
6 months, or some of them have been even moved to become team lead.
Wow.
In that area.
Okay, within 6 months. Okay.
Yeah. So you do see success stories coming through, right? But you have to do a lot of pre-work before that happens.
Is there like a secret formula that you guys have in this reskilling process?
The truth is we make a lot of mistakes as well, right? So we have been doing this for the last 7 years. As I said, when we first started off, we try to reskill and upskill across the board, to give soft skills to everyone. But when it comes to actual transition, it was still very difficult. Then we created deep dives in 3 different areas, preparing them for growth areas job. But you know what, before you get the job, you try to reskill them in that area. It's very academic in nature. They don't really learn. And once they move to the job, they find it hard to apply. So it's only to this iteration that we have gotten the formula that we feel, okay, this is now, it feels right, and we're getting the result of it. But it still require a lot of hard work. And we're going in with our eyes wide open. We know what we need and we know what to expect.
One part that I actually found quite interesting is that the new managers of these reskilled employees, they also get a little bit of coaching, a little bit of training. How does that look like? Because I imagine it could be quite disruptive if there's someone just watching a manager who is watching an employee who is also being watched by another coach or a trainer. What's the structure of this when you guys do it?
Yeah. I mean, don't think of it as someone watching over you, right? Someone as a coach helping you on the side, so you can turn to the coach and say, am I doing this right? What else can I do to support the individual? So what we usually do is that we will hold a class. We do this in batches as we do some of this transition. We partner with Nian, for example, so they actually are the one who bring in these coaches for us, and we will share with them what jobs they are moving into, what the new skills, and so they will guide the manager. Some of these are generic areas, but some of these are specific to the job in terms of the transition that the individual will need as well. So the coach will need to understand the individual plus the job requirement, and then can provide the coaching. And there's a regular check-in as well to make sure that we are keeping this on track.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you tie up with schools to help you for your workforce preparation, right? Like, what are some of the other collaborations that UOB has with other education institutions to prepare your workforce?
With almost every institution of high learnings, like be it NUS, NTU, SMU, polytechnics that we have out there. We are developing a work-study degree. How a lot of polytechnic students they come out, they want to continue their education, so they will go to university. But within the industry, we actually provide an opportunity for them to come and take on the job and still earn their degree. And whatever they do gets counted as part of the degree, and they can graduate at the same time, if not earlier, than someone who's going direct to university.
So this type of work-study degree, it allows the student, the employee, student or employee, both, right?
Yeah.
They are able to earn an income, do real work, and study at the same time, and complete a degree from one of the education institutions. Yes. That's amazing.
Yes. People who are joining us from non-banking background or fresh graduate who are joining us, we put them through these banking fundamentals so that they build strong foundation. They understand if you open up the hood of banking, how does it work inside, how bank makes money, how do you do credit, how trades is being done, and so on and so forth. So, the kind of training, on-the-job training that you will not find in school. And then you produce the best bankers in the market. That's our aspiration. This is an area that we're continuously working on.
Yeah. We're talking a lot about upskilling and reskilling. I think the big elephant in the room is AI. Because it has changed so much. Everybody needs to learn how to use the basics of AI. But there's also the worry that some employees might become over-reliant on the use of AI.
The risk is very real. It's not only for employees, but for students, for us in general. Because it's becoming so easy to use, we might just offload, all the cognitive function to AI, right? So this whole notion of cognitive offloading is something that we are observing, and it's a danger, right? If we rely on them.
Yeah. Dean, sorry, I just want to jump in here, right? Because that's a very important point. Like, we often hear companies say, like, we want to use more AI, but here I'm hearing you say that there's some danger in it. Give us an example of what this danger looks like.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. Because cognitive offloading is a concept that is relatively new because AI is just being introduced. But what will it become? It's just like, many companies today are using consultants. I used to be a consultant myself, so I know this problem. When you start to use consultant and you start to rely on consultant to solve your problem, over time, these muscles does not get developed within the company. So every problem that's get presented to you, the first reaction is that let's hire a consultant to look at it, right? So similarly, you look at Gen AI as even more convenient consultants that's available for you. So you're going to offload every thought process, everything onto the Gen AI. And very soon you're becoming a post box. You post it, then you put out the answer without even screening through or thinking through it. So at UOB, a couple of things that we're doing. Right? One is that we have very clear policy that whether you're using AI or you're not using AI, you are ultimately accountable for the output. Right? There's no blaming of the Gen AI told me so. So you must actually fact check whatever that's coming out. Second, while we're doing the upskilling on Gen AI, we're doing it together with critical thinking. So we also understand that to get the best output from Gen AI, you must ask the right questions, right? And how do you ask the right question? Is that you have to think hard, you have to ask that question. So putting this hand in hand and also telling people that how do you apply Gen AI? You must think first, structure first before you leverage Gen AI as a co-pilot, not an autopilot, is something that's very important.
I see it's like how they are using AI to augment their workforce rather than replace the workforce.
Actually, the Gen AI can be something that's very powerful, especially in the aging population that I actually talked about, technology has not been so accessible to some of the older generation, because it used to be quite cryptic, for you to understand. For many of them, they have to actually rely on giving up, to a newer generation who can come in and adopt technology. But with Gen AI, now you are actually bridging the knowledge gap, for the older generation, the knowledge gap of using some of these digital tools. For the younger generation, some of this knowledge of banking fundamentals that they may not have. So if you use it correctly, this is very powerful. But if you use it wrongly, as you say, the danger is very real.
It's like it's an equalizer and enabler to kind of balance up everyone, right? In areas of gaps or areas that they are not so familiar with, AI can help to equalize a lot of things.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Wow.
All right, well, Dean, it's been a pleasure having you here. But I guess one question to just wrap up our conversation, because we have been talking about reskilling, upskilling. What would you say would be a successful or a meaningful progress in workforce transformation for UOB? Because I understand that it's a journey, right? We're not there yet, but we are working towards getting there. So what is the end goal here?
At UOB, we believe in something, the formula of purpose and balance, right? Purpose, why? Because we want people to come to work knowing the meaning of the work that they do.
Wow.
A lot of times we have difficult days, right? But what gets you going is that if you remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing, that's very important. And it will also give you a lot more satisfaction. You look back all the time that you spend, you feel that, these are time well spent over the years. But purpose alone without balance is not sustainable. I mean, you look at during COVID times, the doctors, the nurses, the purpose is very clear. But after the reopening, many people left the industry for good because it was just, many actually went through a burnout period. So we also know that if you want to create a sustainable career for someone, the balance is important. It's not about work-life balance. It's about the ability for them to manage their career as well as their personal life, and that with their family and friends, right? So if you can have the right equation, then it's a very powerful combination. And along the way, you keep them updated, with the skill set to build that professional career, which in turn will actually help them with their family life as well. For me, if that's the workforce that we're able to create, people can see their purpose, can actually create a workforce where they can achieve balance. That for me is success.
Well, I'm very heartened to hear that, because I'm impressed, because it's like here we are talking about a big company, international company, but yet you are really giving us the essence of what's the most important, right? The people, their lives, why they're there, and if they can connect with their work, the company will benefit in the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love to hear this, because a lot of the times you hear people talk about their work as if it's their life. But, work goes beyond, your life goes beyond just your work. Okay, well, thank you so much, Dean, for joining us. I really had a good time speaking with you today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you as well for listening. If you have a work-related question, you can always write to us. We are at cnapodcast@mediacorp.com.sg. And you can catch episodes of Work It on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Me Listen, or YouTube, where a video version of this episode is available. The team behind this Work It podcast is Ho Pei Ning, Junaini Johari, Joanne Chan, Tiffany Ang, Alison Jenner, and video is by Hanida Amin and Joseph. My name's Ned.
And I'm Gerald, and this episode of the Work It podcast was brought to you by UOB.